I think it's really simple. The advice I would have for her is be still. And that's something that I have, it's been coming up for me on a regular basis, in the last couple of years, is just being still, because the still point is about not affecting, manipulating, accepting or rejecting your current circumstances. It's in a place of observation.
Hello and welcome back to a long overdue episode of Farking The Shoulds. We've been absent and it's been an interesting time, but we're pushing ourselves back to get some more stuff out there because we really enjoy doing this. We haven't had the opportunity to do it together for a while. We seem to have been sabotaging ourselves, and we thought today that we might talk a little about anxiety and just some little coping mechanisms and things that you find along the way. So, darling,
welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome. It's nice to be back. And we almost didn't start this recording because shit was just hitting the fan all over the place. And so McGill's suggestion was 5 minutes at a time. So we were wanting to talk about anxiety, and I had some really beautifully forming thoughts around that I really wanted to take you to. But I think coming back to 5 minutes at a time is a lovely idea. So let's have this potty episode as 5 minutes at a time. And do you want to explain why 5 minutes at a time is so important?
We do forget some things. We've been here for a while. I'm McGill from QuantiPapa.
I'm Jodi from QuantiMama.
And the reason why I suggested 5 minutes at a time is because I think in the last 30 minutes we've had 6 different levels of change, for want of a better thing. And that's change in, I guess, how we're feeling about one another, what the kids are doing, tech stuff not working, all sorts of different things that just, when you put the 5 minutes on top of 5 minutes on top of 5 minutes, it has a real impact. And how you deal with that impact or the choices you make around that are going to define your next 5 minutes. But having said that,
I took that differently when you mentioned that.
Oh, no.
What I thought you meant was that idea of actually just doing the next 5 minutes rather than being in the future of anything further than that. So just bringing life back down to 5 minutes, and once you get through that 5 minutes, do the next 5 minutes, because it really brings the immediacy of what's happening around you to be, I guess, more manageable in that moment.
Yeah, that's a much better definition. That's what I meant. Definitely what I meant. No, and just picking up on what you're saying there, it also brings you back into the here and now, in the present moment.
Yes.
Which is, where we get the best out of ourselves.
Yes. Well, people often talk about looking at what they can control and can't control in any given moment. And 5 minutes doesn't really, I guess, make you swell up on the idea that you have a lot of control. Like, it's literally 5 minutes. And often what happens if you're looking for control in something is you're probably just getting your bearings by about 5 minutes. But it brings you into a space of looking at what are the immediate actions I can do within this 5 minutes that will bring me peace, stillness, movement of my emotions. Like I thought for a minute about, sort of going through a stream of slamming doors through the house. There aren't that many that slam, unfortunately.
No, the kids make a pretty good effort.
They do.
Go down and start in their bedrooms. And
they do very well. So in that moment when it was apparent that I needed 5 minutes, I walked outside and I just sat amongst the trees and listened to the birds. And I mean, being outside is a really powerful change of environment that's readily available, generally speaking. We can all get outdoors. But what was really funny was I had a moment of just sitting there and thinking, I'll just listen to the birds and they'll bring me into that beautiful stillness, and I'll just find my breath and I'll stop losing the plot over IT that was giving me the royal shits. And what was so interesting, and I'm sure they could have been having an absolute ball, but it was almost like the birds were vocalizing my frustration. They were doing all this sounds. I'm sorry about that, but I have to tell you, like, it just kept going. And I was like, oh, maybe they're screaming on my behalf. And I was like, okay, they're doing a sister a solid. I don't know.
Maybe they were slamming doors.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I reached a point of feeling okay, and then I came back into the house, and then I just decided to give you a serve, which doesn't happen too often, but just occasionally, obviously, the little things are just being unsaid. I think that sometimes when you're just caught up in the busyness of life, you don't say the bigger things because it's kind of like, well, now's not a good time, or, you know what I mean? They feel like bigger conversations. And at the end of the day, you're tired and you just want to defrag and even have an escape from your own thoughts in those moments, a bit of a reprieve. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do. And I think that's one of the things we've identified for ourselves, is that we get to the end of the day and we are tired and we want to, well, in my case, we want to get into our cave and be left alone.
Yeah.
Because we're done. We've given pretty much everything we wanted to give for that, that period of time.
Yeah.
And it's then I wouldn't say it's a choice thing, but it is definitely a habitual thing.
Yes.
To go, yep, I'm done what I need to do. I'm laying down in bed.
Yeah, I'm switching off.
I don't do anything now.
Yeah, that's right. But in fact, it's just I'm looking at the car and it's just bringing an analogy. The other day, I was just so over the car being so dirty, I went and gave it one of those really fast washes where you think it's going to cost you $2 and then you keep putting in the gold coins, and so it actually costs about $8. Anyway, the car is kind of it has the essence of being cleaner, but it's not.
Taken one layer of dirt.
I've taken one layer of dirt on the outside, but the windscreen is still, messy as, and really you could get a toothbrush into some of those spots if you wanted to give it a proper detail, and you could definitely give it a vacuum on the inside. It's like washing on the outside is not the same as vacuuming on the inside. My point with this analogy is that those little short burst conversations that you have, maybe to reconnect or to say, oh yeah, we should do another podcast, any of those things that are looking to address in a very fast way, say a connection or an unmet need, is a bit like giving the car a quick wash at one of those wash places, right? In fact, what needs to happen is you need to have a spare Sunday where you get the vacuum cleaner out and you actually wash the car within intention, and you notice all those things.
Time and the presence with it.
That's right. But you go through all the different layers and say, hey, actually, the windscreen's really dirty, so let's look at that. And I think that it's important to do those spring cleans or reconnections every so often, because it really is easy. Like, from the outside, McGill and I have a very strong, close relationship, but just even within that venting that I did today, I said, the podcast is really important. I mean, not suggesting everyone has to go and get a podcast as a relationship tool, but it fosters conversations and connection that we've proven we don't always afford ourselves.
Well, we set this out at the time.
Yeah.
Put aside our misgivings, and we have a genuine, open, honest conversation, and that's why we don't script, because what comes out has to come out. What I will add on the beautiful analogy of the car is Jodi has mentioned that she drove in a driveway and it rained.
Yes, well, that's the rule of any car washing.
When you live on a block that's part dirt, part mud,
it's not so great.
Sometimes it feels like.
So how does that? What's your point then? What's the rain in this scenario?
It's just that whole thing. Well,
I'm saying, like, for our relationship and connection,
no matter how much you put in,
you're going to get rained on.
Am
I the rain as well?
you can be the storm bringer if you want to, but sometimes so am I.
Not often.
But
I think it really is me. I'm a bit spicier than you.
often enough. I'll take it that I'm well balanced. But if you bring back...
Yes, you're perfect, sweetheart.
Oh, yeah, right.
Nothing to be improved upon.
Thank you, darling. It's taken how many years?
Yeah. No. It is what it is.
It's all right. I'll keep beating myself up over it. And,
yeah.
We'll work on it from there.
That's right. Your imperfection is your belief that you're imperfect.
Imperfect or perfect?
Something like that.
No, I want to come back. I was just mentioning that because I do like the analogy.
Yeah.
You did go out and things had been a bit, we just didn't have our hand on the pulse, a finger on the pulse.
Yes.
And the cars, we both from backgrounds where you keep a neat and tidy car, and all of a sudden for us we've got these, dirty cars because we're not putting putting any effort into them.
Yeah.
And you went, I'm going to be the change, and so you took probably 5 minutes.
Yes.
At the car wash. It might have cost you $8.
Yeah.
But 5 minutes
yes.
to start that change. And you got it going and you got home and the first thing you said to me was, I washed the car, but now it's fucking raining.
I know.
And you were not impressed.
Well, actually, I was in a place of acceptance because I was like, well, I don't have the tap to turn the rain off. Like, I just have to accept it. So I actually think that sometimes when you take some kind of affirmative action, it can bring a peace with, any more sort of peaking moments of the shit show that sometimes life feels like. But by the same token, life can obviously feel like a wondrous experience where it's just beautifully unfolding for you as well. And so I'm curious, as we move through this 5 minutes at a time idea, what are the things that you find sustaining in those moments? Because I think I am far more like black and white or hot and cold. Like, I really go one extreme to the other, which I've accepted as just part of me.
It's just part of your beautiful nature.
Thank you. Well, yeah, it's interesting nature.
Well, it keeps you on your toes. That's the other part of half of the partnership.
Yeah. So for someone who's steadier, do you experience those things?
You do. The difference is your ability to, the level of impact it has on you. And not so much your ability to control the impact, because the impact is going to be what it's going to be. And if you can break it down and go, it's like if you hurt yourself. It's a good analogy for now.
Yeah.
And, you pop a shoulder or you hurt a shoulder and you can't do what you would normally do.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's a snapshot in time. Your shoulder is going to get better. You're going to be able to do those things again, and you're going to move forward. And it's about whether you decide to stop in that, what's the word? Stop in that malaise, or stop in that negative space of going, I can't do anything.
Well, and allow the trauma to repeat itself in that sense, the emotional sort of impact.
And to enhance it and to make that impact stronger. Or whether you're going to go, you know what? Yes, this has happened. I acknowledge it's happened. This is what I need to do. And this is the way forward. And that can be frustrating sometimes. And well, in that exact analogy, me being me, I always push through. To my own detriment a lot of the time. But
is that because there's an anchoring to the way you wanted it to unfold, and now you've sort of been shunted to a different course, say, or a different experience? Because there's an idea that when you have an injury or some sort of impact that takes your attention, what happens is you have to recalibrate. So the pushing through is still being attached to the original experience that you wanted to unfold for yourself, or a particular course of action. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And you're probably right. It's also a bit of all probably right.
Yeah.
And pushing through. But when we're looking at that analogy from a point of view of, whether the sun's shining on me most, whether I'm standing in the beautiful sunshine most of the time, or whether I'm sort of sitting between light and dark, and you're sort of saying how sometimes you often find yourself going from one extreme to the other. And find it easier to sit in that moderate space.
Yes.
Where I'm,
You have
90% of the time
you have a trust in the being able to zoom out, don't you?
It'll be fine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you do.
This is an annoying snapshot in time.
Yeah. I think McGill has been a really positive influence in my life, particularly in that aspect, because when you were saying that, it just reminded me of the fact that every time we used to have any kind of mild dust up in the very early years, I want to say like the first 5 years,
Yep.
would that be about right? And like we don't have dust ups. Like when I say a dust up, it would be something like he said something a little bit short to me, and I was like, right. Well, we're going to get divorced, and that'll be great because, like, the kids were little. I was like, great, you can have them half the time, and now I get my life back. And it was sort of disheartening for someone as extreme as I am, because I do love the extremes. Because McGill would say, no matter what, I love you, and I'd be like, crap, like no downtime, no kid-free downtime, because I'd just be there. I'd go straight to the place of going, I only have to do washing for one person. I have to do, cooking for one person. It was like this.
Sounds amazing.
I know, you see, appreciate it now, don't you? But it was really interesting because I think that we got to a point where you expressed the closest of big emotions, which was this exasperation with me of just, FFS, this is not changing just because we have a conversation that perhaps doesn't feel like, sunshine and daisies.
Yeah, and look, I think it's funny you bring that up because it is something from a very long time ago.
Yeah.
Where, and sometimes not so much, I may not necessarily be aiming to be short or say something that was, derisive, but it was the interpretation sometimes it was taken.
Yes.
And if you come back to that and you look at that and go, quite often with our partners, we get into a point where there's a 5-minute snapshot out of 16 hours of a day we're together, and for some reason that becomes our focal point.
Yeah.
And that focal point can either be a negative or it can be an extremely positive one. In relation to what Jodi was saying, it probably took me about 6 or 7 years to not only show her, explain to her, but finally convince her that I had no interest in leaving or going anywhere else, because I was pretty damn happy. I still am, which is great.
Yeah.
But this whole notion that you needed that constant reassurance, and it took that amount of time, and I could have a 5-minute snapshot where, for whatever reason, whether it was justified or not, which really is irrelevant, but you could focus on something and go, right, I'm out of here. This is how my life's going to go because he's walking away.
Yes.
You're not.
No. Well, I'm the victim, of course.
Of course.
I have to be the heroine in my own story. I think that's reasonable.
Well, we all create our own reality, right?
Yeah.
And for some people, that's how we can deal with extreme events or negative things that happen in our lives. And we create our own reality and we don't stop and reflect on that to see whether or not it's justified or whether or not it's realistic.
Well, and the radical self-responsibility of how are you showing up in your relationship, like that, I don't even think I've ever sat in that space of thinking about the impact of what it was like for McGill, for me to constantly question his commitment to the relationship. I think because I just accepted the fact that I was batting above my average. So like I was already like, I'm on borrowed time here, so we'll get some nice babies out of it.
And then give them to him to raise so that I only have
well,
to
there's that
myself.
too. Yeah. Minor details. So,
oh, how wrong you were.
So, well, I know that's right, but I am very grateful to be wrong.
What would you do? What would you go back to that 30-year-old, probably about 35, 36-year-old Jojo, and what would you tell her now?
I think it's really simple. The advice I would have for her is be still. And that's something that I have, it's been coming up for me on a regular basis, in the last couple of years, is just being still, because the still point is about not affecting, manipulating, accepting or rejecting your current circumstances. It's in a place of observation. And when you put it into a place of observation, you have the opportunity to extract the wisdom out of there, whatever that might be, whether that's self-reflection of how you're feeling, whether it's an opportunity to change something within your field, as in, go outside, have a breath. But the stillness is really about taking all of the extra stimulus that we seem to have and we seem to apply for ourselves, and it declutters that moment, because all these like low vibe responses to stuff, it's always anchored in shoulds. It's always anchored in someone's story, and probably multiple stories, including societies. And it's always anchored in this need for some kind of action and immediacy, like the eBay effect, of the countdown timer. You've got, like, it's this kind of adrenalized response. Of course, it's adrenalized. What a stupid thing to say. But you know what I mean? An obvious thing to say. My point is that it's coming from the adrenals, like it's coming from the sympathetic nervous system. So it is adrenalized.
You've been intentionally triggered with that. And the goal is to get a response out of you.
That's right. There's a potency to it. And there's this sense of you've got to get moving. You've got to take an action. You've got to go slam a door. You've got to move the energy. And that's true, but perhaps there's a more efficient way that we can do that, and that is to be still and allow for the energy to still move. Because energy will move no matter what. It doesn't require a door to be slammed, which then creates a ripple effect of a traumatic experience within the household.
It has the potential to, yeah.
Well, I think it does. I mean, every time I hear a door slam in this place, I was like, ah! Like, it just adds to that collective frustration of this whole story of disrespecting the space you're living in and people's time that actually built it, and like all those things, and potential for impact of damage. And you know what I mean? Like, this is massively layered story to one door slam, and I feel that viscerally when the door does slam, except if I'm slamming it. And then it's okay.
Well, you know how to fix it, so
I blessings to my mother. Do as I say, not as I do. That's what I've always wanted to tell my kids. No, not really. I actually want to be the example to them, and so that's why the stillness is really important. And it's funny, without betraying our daughter's trust, she had a lot to move last night, a lot of emotional stuff to move, and I just had this epiphany. I'm so blessed to go to this women's circle every week, and McGill's participated in men's circles, and there is no goat sacrificing that goes on. It's all very above board. But one of the things that happens is that people have the opportunity, the participants, so the women or the men, have the opportunity to share what's happening for them, and it can be however they show up. There's no need of scripting. It literally is whatever comes through and wants to be shared from your heart, and it's very powerful. Now, I think for whatever reason we don't tend to apply that to kids. Because we guide and facilitate and provide for them in a way that gives a sort of structure and a framework for being a parent. You're like the CEO, CFO of your children's lives in some way. And with the emotional stuff, we don't always manage that very well. In fact, a lot of parenting is all about jumping kids down and making them compliant, usually to our schedule, to our wishes, to our timeline, to the bigger picture that we have playing over, because we're the CEO of the household as well and the family. And often what happens is we don't give space to the kids to have their voice. And I know it will happen in some households, and certainly aware parenting and attached parenting is about that. However, within a lot of those frameworks, there is still this need to solve rather than bear witness.
Yeah, and it was a really good example last night.
Yeah.
I think.
So what I didn't say, which I will just explain, was that just had a thought of, I wonder what would happen. I mean, she was super upset. Like, she had some things that had built up. Started with a door slam, of course, but it had built up over time. There was a lot of wounding in there that she needed to express. At no time did she ask me to solve it, which was really great. She asked kind of more, what are those rhetorical questions, right? They actually didn't need an answer, and the problem solver in me, and the parent that wants my child to, you know, have a beautiful life, wanted to answer those questions, but I went, zip it. And that's what we do in our women's circle. When someone's sharing from their heart, we literally just hold that space, we go still. And so that's what I did last night. And for QK2, it was very uncomfortable because she wanted it solved. She wanted rescuing. And one of the things I want for her is to reawaken to her own power and really get a sense that it won't be external factors that, you know, bring her peace or happiness or joy or
define her.
Or define her. That's right. They can be almost filters on the camera lens of her life, but ultimately she is the camera. She has all of the equipment she needs. And so whilst she was moving through that space, I went still and I just concentrated on giving her a loving energy and a whole energy. And the reason why I say whole is I didn't want her feeling like I was taking anything away from her. I didn't want her feeling like she was taking up too much of my time. I didn't want her to feel like anything she was saying was invalid, but I also didn't want her to feel like anything she was saying was outrageous or over the top. It was just this still point of observation and holding space. And, you know, whether she feels better for it is a question for her. It's not for me to comment on, but what I've observed is that she definitely shifted some stuff. And if nothing else, she had a really good cry fest. And I just think crying is one of the best things to move energy. If your options are smashing some plates or slamming some doors or having a cry, then I think crying is a far more productive way to move the energy.
Well, generally, if you're moved to that point, you're being a lot more still.
Yes.
So it's your internal thoughts where the emotion is being moved or the energy is being moved, as opposed to when you're doing a physical action that is releasing the energy in a different way. So in this particular case, she had the ability to reflect upon herself and her and how she was going in the space.
Yes.
And I think that's that was a really important thing. And for two people that are emergency services background, we are problem solvers.
Yeah.
You know, if the shit hits the fan, we're the people you want nearby because we're going to assess a situation. We're going to, and that's part of the way we're wired. It's part of the way that we were trained, all that sort of stuff.
It's a cool skill set to have.
It is, but putting that skill set aside.
Yes.
And being able to hold space, which you did.
Yeah.
I didn't have the capacity for it last night. There's no way I could have done it.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm still got a lot of that. I need to solve this now. And I noticed that with QK4, who often is flying off the handle and doesn't work well when you meet head on with him.
No.
It's, you know, if our kids are our mirrors, well, he's probably my mirror on self of how I need to grow with my interactions. And I sort of listen to what you say. And if we take that particular one with QK2 last night and we go, that was a huge snapshot in time. It was more than a little 5-minute break we're talking about.
No.
But it was probably a reset. So that over the next period of time, if we can give her 5 minutes, might be 10, might be 20. But if we can give her that time, that bit of time that she needs each time, then
it doesn't build up.
It doesn't build up. And when it does, the skill set to move it is there.
Yeah.
It's not only to move it, but to evaluate it. And she was still pretty shirty with me this morning.
That's okay.
Which was fine.
Yeah.
And that probably lasted about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then all those layers just fell away.
Well, and you think about what's the thing that is like the kryptonite for her.
Yeah, well, she wants connection.
Connection.
She wants to be hugged and held and know that she's safe. But at the same time, just like a mother, feel free to express herself however she feels.
Yeah, she needs room to flap her fiery dragon wings as well.
Yes.
But also,
but no, that's a safe space.
Yes.
And there's no judgment in there for that sort of stuff.
No. And I think that it was very powerful. Like, it's an analogy or an example for us to apply to anything. Like today, if we go back to our 5 minutes, McGill he just sort of looked at me like possibly a deer in the headlights, going, I'm not quite sure whether there's any safe way to manage this crazy woman right now. But what you did do was you actually held space beautifully. So I do know you have the ability to do it.
It's funny you say that, because that's exactly what was going through my head.
I felt it.
When Jodi was just having that little bit where she needed to, when you pick up a piece of tech and it's just supposed to work and it doesn't, and go, okay, well, that's okay. I can deal with that. I'll go and get this going. You pick up something else. And then next thing you know, and to your absolute credit, it took 3 things to really get you to that point.
My capacity is increasing.
But it was also where your limit was done for that snapshot in time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to step into that problem solver role because that's what I do. And there would have been 3 or 4 times where I went to talk.
Yeah.
And I intentionally stopped myself. And I thought, because you said something last night, and who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right?
You listened to something.
I listened to you.
That's what I'm saying. You listened to something I said.
Not only did I listen, I heard and I simulated. And it was exactly what you were dealing with QK2, where you said, I just needed to hold space. She didn't need to hear answers. And I thought, you know what? Right now, you don't need to hear the answer for that. Or, yes, we can get that fixed. Or, well, let's use this instead. All you needed to do was to allow that build up of emotion to be expressed. And it probably was 5 minutes.
That's right. It was. And, it gives us an opportunity to go through, when your space is being held, it gives you an opportunity to go through and another thing, and another thing, and another thing. And that's where the juice is, because when you're not trying to solve that for someone, they just literally get to purge it out of their system. And so there's real power in even giving that a voice. It's not looking for anything other than a release. And in this world of constantly fiddling and touching things to make
instant
gratification, and we're just fiddlers these days. In what world did we think we needed fidget spinners, for crying out loud? It's just such a beautiful example of how nuts this world is, with its need to meddle and get involved. And instead, we must become disciplined with bringing stillness into our days, into our 5 minutes, especially when the shit feels like it's hitting the proverbial fan big time, because in those moments when we are loose with our choices, we create collateral impact and traumas. And I feel that keenly, because when I witness it, it bruises my heart, going, there is a lack of discipline in this moment, but we have been sold this idea that we can misbehave in these ways. And I think that we are creating an environment that doesn't nourish anyone in those moments. You can be abusive and apologize, and that's great, but at what point do you stop being abusive?
Yeah, no one's holding you to account for that.
That's
initial
right.
action.
That's right.
That led to the next part.
So the radical self-responsibility kicks in. Yeah. And
it's just interesting, because I'm just reflecting back over what we've said. And a lot of the practices, and this is something that I guess Jodi and I found over the years, a lot of the practices that we are now able to verbalise are things that we've done for many years, but we had no formal framework around it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of you will find that you have these amazing skill sets and these amazing little programs that you run when you're challenged or when you're trying to hold space. You have these programs, but you don't necessarily have the framework around them. And when you start putting the framework around them, you have all these aha moments.
Yeah.
And you evolve.
Yes.
And you get better and better and better at it.
Yeah.
Because what you would say when you would have that moment in time, and I remember a few of these where you'd be, frustrated with me, for want of a better description, because
there's only about 3 occasions, but sure.
That's why I remember.
Yeah.
So, and I could just see that at this point in time, from a mere male perspective or a mere unevolved person's perspective, look at it going, anything I say right now is going to be wrong.
Yes.
But if I change that and I go, you know what? She needs support, space held. I'm just going to be present, which is what I would say now.
That's right.
Instead of back then where it's funny that the stuff it's always floating around. We have so many answers within us.
Yes.
And it's a matter of how we can reach into ourselves and take that, and get them all to work together, because that's really important.
We've got a little gnome at the window that's come to visit.
Maybe he needs his 5 minutes.
He does.
At this
nice
point
one.
in time.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being our cherry popping, being honest with our cherry popping journey. A re-popping, wasn't it? A re-popping.
Number 11. We got 10 out.
Yeah, no, it's like we did 10 and went,
we did that.
A tyre.
Oh, hang on.
Good.
Yeah, Jodi's got more to say.
Who knew? Who knew? Who knew? But I'm so grateful to have had this conversation, and thank you so much for, I guess, unwittingly holding space for me as I move through my 5 minutes at a time, because I feel so much better, and I'm conscious that I still did that myself, but I was afforded it through this opportunity of this conversation. So I'm grateful to you, beautiful QuantiFolks. I'm grateful to McGill as well.
Always grateful.
And we'll look forward to talking with you very soon.
And take your 5 minutes, however that works for you.